On January 26th this year, the administration announced that it would be pausing pending decisions on export permitting for LNG to non-FTA countries. This surprise decision was yet another example of this administration's efforts to kill American independence and American energy independence. This is, let's make no mistake about it, this is an effective ban. One person's ban is another person's pause. But this committee has been conducting oversight to understand what led to the administration's decision. The motivations appear to be entirely political, and that's very unfortunate. Reports indicate that before the ban, the White House met with activists and TikTok influencers, not making that up, who were adamant that the administration take radical steps to address climate change and eliminate fossil fuels. John Podesta, the senior advisor to the President for International Climate Policy, engaged in these meetings, calling into question what information the administration relied upon to impose the export ban and risk the ban's significant economic and national security implications.
This is a politically manufactured non-issue. This is actually not a ban. This is about using the best available economic analysis and science to understand how LNG exports affect American consumer markets, how they affect the price of oil and gas here in the United States, how they affect prices for consumers here in the United States, and in light of supply and demand issues, especially with foreign wars, with constraints on gas exports and other countries, and other impacts, including climate change and social justice and environmental impacts, what the implications are for expanding our capacity. I think any good business would want a good, sound economic analysis. And if the United States is a business, as we know it is, it's in the business of making sure that the American taxpayers get a good return on any investment that we make or any sale that we get from American resources, then it is who of us to do our due diligence to make sure that the energy that is being produced here in the United States, the infrastructure that the United States is investing in, and the places in which that infrastructure goes does not have an undue impact on our economy, on American families, on oil and gas prices, and on the environment and the global climate crisis. And that's really what this all comes down to. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our Assistant Secretary for being here with us today. As was mentioned, this is a rehash of a topic that we've already covered in this subcommittee, and in fact, we've already had 2 hearings on gas stoves, 2 hearings on how the government has forced electric vehicles, and now a second hearing on this 1-year pause reviewing applications for LNG exports. This is about modernizing and understanding the state of play, especially after we've come out of a historic pandemic and global disturbances in international gas markets, to understand what's going on, which seems pretty reasonable. But oftentimes, in this committee, things get spun in a way that sounds like there's some vast conspiracy theory. And I think it's important to just be real with the American people. We are literally 2 weeks out from adjourning for the holidays. On January 20th, we'll have a new administration. They've made very clear, it was just stated in the opening statement, that their intention is to vastly expand LNG exports. And that has nothing to do with American energy security. That has everything to do with expanding opportunities to sell American oil and gas overseas so that American companies can profit from the pumping that they're doing here in the United States. We are energy secure. And in fact, as somebody who also comes from an oil and gas state, we have amongst the highest oil and gas pumping that we've ever seen in American history right now. In fact, just in our backyard. So this is not about energy security. And before I came to Congress, I was actually a staffer on the Senate Energy Committee. And I marveled often as a staffer when we would see these industry-led hearings come before the committee. And you always wonder, what are the conversations that were had with industry before they decided to hold hearings like this? Because it's clearly in the service of creating a congressional record so that when the Trump administration comes in, there's some legal and possibly congressional teeth to whatever fight these private companies are hoping to take on. So I think it's important to be clear-eyed about what this hearing actually is and pull back the curtain a little bit, and to also be clear about what it is that we're actually talking about. This is not a ban. The Department of Energy is updating their data and analysis, working with experts from our national laboratories, and it's an important part of the process for looking at additional permit applications. And this is just part of doing business and being a responsible business. And so this is a bit of a witch hunt, especially in the final days of this Congress and of the administration. I think it's really important that we have the Assistant Secretary here today to talk about what the Biden administration has done to address American energy security. And in fact, we have amongst the highest energy security we've ever had in American history. And, you know, prices are going down. Manufacturing is going up, jobs are going up, and we're having a renaissance here in the United States in domestic production and manufacturing. And so I think it would be a dang shame to see it get dismantled in the coming months, because we know that it's stimulating economic opportunity, it's creating thousands of jobs, it's helping millions of Americans, it's bringing down costs, and this is really about trying to pump up profits for private corporations, not about caring for the people of this country. So I look forward to hearing from the Assistant Secretary. I applaud the Department of Energy's efforts to create a fact-based policy document that we can use to help plan for our industry exports and to understand the economic and environmental implications of what we do as we are, as a country, figuring out how we want to handle this industry and its implications. So with that, I yield back. These are always interesting journeys into the inner psychic worlds of industry and whatever it is they're trying to get out of these hearings so they can make their case in front of boards and courts and boardrooms. But I like to go back to basics a little bit because I think one of the things that we can do in hearings is to help educate the public. I think for many folks who are not industry experts or not energy nerds like us, they may not even know what exactly LNG is. Why do we export it? Why is the United States the largest exporter of LNG? How did we get here? So I wonder, Assistant Secretary, could you just briefly kind of give us a quick primer on what is LNG? Where does it come from? Why is the U.S. exporting so much of it? Why did we need to do a study about it?
So LNG is natural gas, highly compressed, so compressed that you can take very large volumes of gas and transport it on a ship efficiently, cost-effectively. The technology was really pioneered decades ago by Japan, which has deep energy insecurity because they don't produce their own energy resources. And starting from that Japanese leadership, it has become a major component of global energy production and use. Because it's natural gas, but it can be transported in compressed form, it's very convenient. It can be shipped all over the world. Our industry was financed by the private sector based on long-term contracts. The destinations of those contracts are flexible, so it's been very attractive for investors in the United States and around the world to invest in the development of our liquefaction terminals. U.S. LNG is especially attractive in the global market because of that destination flexibility. The second part of your question, I'm sorry,
Well, I think you're getting at it. One of the things I think that's important to understand, because oftentimes just the kind of economic and production realities of oil and gas production get lost in these conversations. And in New Mexico, similar to Texas, a significant portion of our state's income comes from oil and gas revenues, and so we track it very closely. And one of the things that I think is important to understand for folks who don't track the industry is that we had an exponential increase starting about a decade ago in gas production, especially in the Permian Basin, which is in New Mexico and Texas. And as a result of that and shrinking markets and the inability to offload gas in a timely manner in some cases, and overproduction because there was a lot of new horizontal drilling happening, et cetera, exports became increasingly important because we had extra stuff, right? And so there is an interest right now because there is a tremendous opportunity to increase drilling, which I think is the point that our colleagues across the aisle are making. but it's for the benefit of these private companies. So it is in the interest of these private companies to drill, baby, drill as much as they can produce and export as much as they can produce. But one of the constraining factors is infrastructure to actually get it onto ships and actually send it overseas. And so I think folks who are listening who may not understand the industry and kind of the ebb and flow of oil and gas production may not really kind of understand kind of the economics of what we're talking about here. This is not about American energy security. This is about creating international markets for private industry to sell excess gas that they have. And what the U.S. government is trying to do under the Biden administration is be responsible so that if industry is going to have a bonanza, which is being driven by international prices and demand, that we do it in a responsible manner, that it doesn't harm American consumers, that it doesn't drive up the cost of our own oil and gas prices, that it doesn't hurt us in our own utility payments, that it doesn't hit us at the pump, and that it doesn't have unintended consequences globally in terms of our geopolitical relationships with other countries, especially as we're facing conflicts and other responsibilities we have to our allies and those who are not our allies. So I think it's just important for folks to understand the context of what this study is. It's one of the most sophisticated modeling exercises. It's not a piece of paper, right? Folks are talking like, oh, they found a dusty piece of paper somewhere in a filing cabinet that they had already wrote and filed away. This is a multi-million-dollar modeling exercise to understand global export markets for gas products that the industry would like the U.S. government to permit and subsidize. And we're trying to figure it out, is it in the public interest to allow this giant bonanza without any guardrails around it? And that's really what this study is about, and that's why the majority is bringing this hearing here, is because industry is asking them to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Crabtree, 16 states sued the Biden-Harris administration over the LNG pause, in response to which a federal district court judge issued a stay against the LNG pause going into effect. Why are DOE and the Biden-Harris regime continuing with the pause and defying the order issued by the federal district court? And I apologize if you've answered this, but I've not received the answer to this in this hearing yet.
What I said just previously with Congressman Perry is that following the judge's order at the end of August, we issued a non-FTA authorization to New Fortress Energy Altamira, and I'm not going to speak to which further applications in the timing of them, but it is our intent to comply with any judge's order.
If it is your intent, then why isn't it happening?
I'm not going to comment further on something that's in
So
litigation.
we're here as United States representatives in an oversight subcommittee, having a hearing, bringing you in from the administration. We have your salary is appropriated by Congress, and it is our role to have oversight and accountability. And for you to sit here and refuse to answer is really struggling. And in fact, it may be the reason why we have to create a commission now, the Department of Government Efficiency Commission, to have actual oversight and accountability on the administration, on bureaucrats. You know, we used to call that Congress, but when we bring you in here, we're just stonewalled. You have a federal court decision on this stay, and this decision is being defied by the administration, and you refuse to comment on why.
Congresswoman, it is common practice for someone in my role not to comment on something that is subject to pending litigation.
It's common that it's frustrating to the American citizens who pay your salary, and these tax dollars are squandered, rules are defied. Now, Mr. Crabtree, this LNG pause, it's clearly just more pandering to the Green New Deal extremists from this administration. Exporting LNG is actually great for job creation, our economy, and even emissions reductions. No one produces energy cleaner in the entire world than we do here in America. The United States produces the cleanest energy in the world, and if the rest of the world isn't getting energy from us, where are they getting it from? They're getting it from Russia, China, Venezuela, from Iran. Our natural gas is 42% cleaner than Russia's gas. This pause is funding both sides of wars around the world. And we need to stop buying oil and gas from Russia, stop begging OPEC, Venezuela, and even Iran to produce energy for us, and start producing and exporting American energy and creating these American jobs. And I'm confident that the next administration, with President Trump's leadership, will prioritize our natural security and our energy security. And the lack of transparency. Yes, sir.
Congresswoman, this decision to pause our pending applications, as I've said several times in this committee, have not led to stopping 1 BTU of U.S. natural gas exports, because we are currently exporting 12 billion cubic feet.
How many jobs have been lost?
Let me finish. We're about to get to 14 billion cubic feet, and we have authorized.
How many jobs?
Authorized an additional.
Actually, the time is mine. And the time is mine.
We have authorized an additional 12 billion cubic feet.
How many American jobs have been lost?
And there will be no impact.
Tens of thousands of American jobs have been lost. Absolutely, they have. My district in Colorado has been regulated into poverty because of decisions like this, because of defying federal court rulings. This administration is costing American jobs and livelihood. Mothers are forced to go to work and get a second job.
Mr. Crabtree, can you let the member finish, please? And then you can.
Now, the lack of transparency by DOE is demonstrated not only by the DOE's withholding of the FOIA documents that could answer legitimate requests, but also by DOE refusing to give members of Congress answers to their questions about the LNG export pause. And that's what you're doing today. You're refusing to give us answers here that we are trying to seek. Why is the DOE not responding to questions asked by members of Congress?
As I've already said, we have provided documents on 4 different occasions. We'll do so again on Friday to this committee. As far as the litigation, I am not going to speak to that. And I do have to respond to the issue of jobs. Right now on the Gulf Coast, the development of liquefaction terminals is proceeding at such a pace that they're having challenges finding
the time has expired. I do want, did the Biden administration make the decision to institute a pause on LNG exports to appease climate activists?
No.
I believe they did. My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.